Dr. Jazz.
I just want to jump in. You mentioned the new band, and I kind of wanted to start with this, because I listened to the holographic principle. I mean, there's so much
Okay.
footage out there on YouTube, from Smalls and the festivals you guys did and various gigs, and it sounds amazing. You sound, killing, and your tunes sound beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, how did you hook up those guys together? I mean, that lineup.
Well, excuse me too. I'm gonna be sniffing and sneezing, mate. I sound like I have some kind of long extended summer cold. I don't know what it is. I'm riding my bike, I'm exercising, but it's like and
No
wake in the
worries.
morning with this stuff. So I have to find something. I don't know. But anyway, the band is I have one of those processes where I really take my time and choose people like Duke Ellington did. He
Mm,
has I look for people that have certain types of tendencies that are open-minded,
yeah.
because I'm not one of those types. My background, is very varied in the music,
Yeah, I know.
so
Yeah.
I have to have people that are open to all types of situations in the music, that they're constantly thinking of innovative ways to improvise and create sounds together as a band. Um, the original holographic principle has Michał Wieber from Poland on keyboards, and he's
Hmm.
still a part of the organization. I had him here to record on the new record as well, and hopefully, we can bust into some of the more international festivals. I like to have him there as well with my
Sure.
present
Yeah.
keyboardist Alex Collins. But so the bass player Nimrod Speaks. He's been with me. Woo, Lord, it's been a long time
Yeah,
now. I
he's
would
killing,
say,
man. He's
yeah, I love him. He's probably been with me over about like 12 years or something. I had a
oh wow.
band previous, maybe even 15. Yeah, somewhere maybe around 15 years. But I had a band called Band Barrage, and we did a recording called Heal. It was
Hmm.
a very nice recording. Um, the unfortunate thing is that at the time of that band, I was teaching heavily at Penn State, and I was kind of like a single father, so I didn't tour as much. Um, but Nimrod's been with me since then.
Mm.
He's going to continue to be with me. Now, and then there's Alex Collins, the
Yeah.
keyboardist, who he was recommended to me by another dear friend, another great bass player named Calvin Jones, who's
Sure.
from America here. Calvin plays upright and electric. Excuse me. I have not only do I have that band, I have other ensembles that I work around New York and other places in the States. I have one we do more kind of like groove music,
Yeah.
neo soul and hip hopish type of thing. So
Oh man. Wow. Fantastic.
Calvin was working in that organization, and he recommended Alex. And so I met Alex and said, wow, this kid is pretty cool. I really like him. He's got the sounds. So I did a few things with him before inviting him into Holographic Principle.
Okay.
So he's been with me for a number of years now as well. He's an excellent transcriber. So, and I have to throw that in now because we're in the middle of a big uh concert coming up where I orchestrated all of my music. It's like a 30-piece
Oh
orchestra
man. Wow.
and holographic principle. Then I have all of these special guests that are going to be involved in the show with me, like Greg Osby, the
Okay.
great poet Quincy Troop, Eric Person on saxophones,
Oh man.
uh,
Wow.
Lynn Fitmont, an extraordinary vocalist from most of these, the core of the people are from St. Louis because the festival's in my hometown of St. Louis. I'll get to that later. You still want to ask about the band. Okay, hold on. Let
Yeah.
me finish. It's a lot going on. So, this stuff starts coming.
Yeah. Sure.
So Mr. Alex Collins. He's the newest kind of, I would say, member in my big conglomerate of musician pool, and he's amazing. He's got the energy, you know. He's listening, he's learning.
Yeah.
I stay away from players who don't want to experiment or feel that they know enough. It's like, I'm like, look, man, I'm 62. I've played with everybody pretty much on the planet, and I don't know anything. I'm learning every time I sit behind my instruments. So, you know, I need that type of
energy,
that type of energy, that type of thought process, right? So then that brings me to our latest member, Alain Bradette, who is he's a newest member of Holographic Principle. However, he and I have been associated with each other for over 20 years.
Oh, okay.
He's a great multi reedman. He plays all of the saxes, alto, soprano, tenor. He plays all of the flutes. He plays oboe.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
A lot of music which I composed for oboe. And he plays EWI, the electronic wind instrument. You know? So he and I go back to, I moved out of New York probably around 16, 17 years ago, but even no further back than that now. Time is moving so fast, I don't know. So I had to take my daughters, and I was living in Florida at a home my mom and I have, because I was a single father. And this is before I got the job at Penn State. Anyway, I get involved with the great late Sam Rivers, who was living in Orlando, Florida with his big band. And, you know, when I came in, he was like, hey, Ronnie, wow, you know, because I used to play at this place in New York when I was a kid. And so he's like, yeah, you know, you could do some big band gigs. I'm like, great. So in the big band, I met Alain. He was already there playing tenor sax. He had a residency with, you know, the Cirque du Soleil organization.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So he was down at the one in Florida for, man, I don't know how many years, gobs of years, as their principal reedsman. So he was also in Sam Rivers' big band. So we started to talk, and then he was like, he came up to me the first night I was there. He saw me play. He said, man, are you Ronnie Barrage? You recorded on Courtney Pine's record, what is that name of that record? Real Life Jazz Stories or something like that. I was like, yeah, that's me. He's like, man, that's my favorite record. He says, you're my favorite drummer. I mean, that's like, okay. So we started our relationship then, way back then. So I had some bands in Florida, which I used him, and we were playing with Sam. And then I left and started teaching at Penn State. I put together a newer version of one of my favorite bands I had called Third Kind of Blue. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. So, but anyway, he's been working with me for quite a while.
Yeah. You mentioned Ellington, right? And you know, and composing, and I listened to the Dance of the Great Spirit. I mean, you mentioned there's a new one coming out now, but like, you know, when I listen to your compositions, does it help you? I mean, like, you know, you seem to be writing for the players in that sense, I guess, you know, that you know what Nimrod plays or Alex and all these guys. Like, how did you compose those tunes? You know, I listened to your music, and it's like, you know, beautiful melodies. Then you throw in some odd meters. I think there's or either 17 or 11 or whatever, you know, it's like, yet still the melody is like a guiding principle so many times. Like, how did you write the music for the last one? I mean, even for the new one, how do you do that? What's your process there?
Well, you know, it's all of this music comes from a very personal space or an experience in my life. So the compositions usually, it's weird because they can come to me in various times, but they usually come whole.
Oh wow! Okay.
I don't have the technical capacity to run down and just jot it all down like that, right? So I have to get behind my drums. I have to play the parts on the keyboard as I'm keeping time. That's one of my functions that, you know, I like to do. I mean, I'm freer when I have my keyboard, my drums, and I can, you know,
Yeah.
and sing. So uh I mean, I have a skill set God gave me where I can sing a different melody and play a different rhythm and play a different rhythm here. So that's kind of like how I start to put things together. Then I'm like, oh man, but you know, if I do this with the bass line, I know Nimrod would really capture it and he would do, you know. So I work on things like that, but primarily they kind of come whole from some type of emotional feeling or place
Sure.
I'm in, or something that has happened that's you know, very, very inspiring in my life. A lot of the songs on the new record now are also talking about a lot of the things that we're going through as a people in the world. So, you know, it's so much to draw on if you're that type of human being. You know, what kind of bothers me, because it's interesting that you got on this topic now, but what kind of bothers me is that it's a lot of young good players and writers, but it seems that I don't feel where the music comes from. I feel more like I'm trying to show how many notes I can play, or things like that. And I'm really, in terms of a composer, I like to hear a melody line. I like to hear how it blossoms. I like to hear the music telling some type of story.
Yeah.
So that's the way I've been my entire life. When I was a young kid, even dibbling and dabbling, I've always written something, you know, and it always has to do with something. I fell off my bike and busted my head. I wrote a song about it. My band ended up playing it. It was a funk tune when we was kids, you know. But it's like it's something, you know. It's always something that's very inspired by words that I grew up listening from my grandfather, from Duke Ellington, from people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi. Those people, you know, I've read a lot of their works and literature, and it, you know, it inspires me to look at how we can try to always look for a better trajectory of how we're living. So, you know, I think I know for sure my compositional process has to do with that, as well as knowing the capabilities of the musicians I'm with.
Sure.
You know, because, you know, I've had other units, and you know, we would attempt to play some things. It's just the concept isn't there. You know, sometimes it's like you look at a piece of music and people can interpret the notes, but they don't interpret the concept. You know, or the feeling of what you want to do, or they stay too confined within the paper. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want you to learn it, and then let's go. Let's jump off the cliff. Let's hang glide. Let's flip over. Let's go under the ocean. Let's go up to Mars. Let's, you know, let's do that.
Risk taking and stuff. It can be scary. Like,
absolutely. But that's the beauty of music, you know.
Sure.
I don't, most of the masters that I played with, they have never, ever, ever played it safe. And I thank God I didn't get called for too many of those gigs where I just had to do that with people, you know, so. I mean, you know, working with people like Julius Hemphill, and then on the other spectrum, Wayne Shorter, and the compositions are allowing you to be free and also do this and to hear something different. I've been blessed.
yeah. I mean, you know, I checked today on the records that I have you on, and I was like, man, you know, like you said, like the scope of basically, you know, creators of jazz that you played with is just incredible. Some of my, you know, favorite players. And I watched today, like on YouTube, some stuff with Trio, with Avery on bass and McCoy.
Oh yeah.
Where you're like, I don't know how old you're there, like 20, and you're like from Berlin Festival, and you're like burning this upswing, and man, it's incredible. But you mentioned your grandfather's record collection, and or like, you know, like let's say early 70s, I guess, like mid-70s, you know, what was the jazz drumming that got you excited? I mean, like, who were the first
Oh
guys that,
man, straight to Elvin Jones.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that's so kind of okay.
You know, yeah, I mean, prior to that, listening to my grandparents and the music that they had, you know, there was all of the Papa Joe Jones, Sid Catlett, all of those different earlier drummers and things like that. But when by the time 70s came around, you know, I come from a musical family, so there was 5 uncles under my mother. My mother's the oldest of 8, so
Oh, wow.
there was
Okay.
this diverse pool of music happening all the time. But in terms of drumming, I mean, I heard so many different wonderful players, but man, when I heard Elvin Jones, I was done. That was like, that's it. That's it. So
Which
I
record was
think
it? With Coltrane or like his stuff? Or?
well, my favorite things was
Okay.
actually the first 3, 4, 6, 8 type of drum situation I tried to learn. And I showed Elvin when I played one time. I was like, when we became friends later when I was in New York, I'm like, Elvin, man, this is the first drum. I said, look. He said, I didn't play that shit. He said, I played it like this. I was like, oh, wow. And it's, you know, but it was like he appreciated everything because I incorporated a little bit more polyrhythms even than he did.
Sure.
It was just amazing. I think that was the first thing that really inspired me to show me how, man, this rhythm thing, you know, I mean, I had always been playing drums and playing, but he was the first one to show me different ways to think about independence when I'm playing, you know.
Yeah.
Keeping the swing like this and doing variations and other things, and my hi-hat is grounding me, you know. Of course, after Elvin, you know, I fell in love with Art Blakey for a period. I was always in love with other types of drummers as well, you know, Danny Richmond, Freddie Waits,
Oh man, yeah.
those types of guys, their energy that they brought also to the thing. Also in high school, I met a very great technician, Alan Dawson. I was
Oh sure, man.
really young in high school,
The guru.
you know. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, I'm not a technician like those guys. I have my skill set, you know, I'm able to use my limbs independently in different ways, but I've never been a stickler for like, you know, certain people you could tell that their motto is practicing a drum solo.
Yeah.
I've never done anything like that in my entire life. Even from early days, even reading through the books, I would read for a while and then I'm like, nah, I gotta be free. And I teach my students now, you sit down in the drum, just express yourself. Forget about all the technique you want to have or that you've learned. Just play what comes for the moment. And then you can always revert back to those things. But yeah, so you know, it's
Interesting.
it's my way of expressing myself musically on the drums. But yeah, Elvin was the first one who was really the catalyst. Of course, you know, many years studying Billy Cobham and Tony Williams, you cannot do it.
Yeah, sure.
Those guys just saturated, you know. I also loved Lenny White. I also loved Narada Michael Walden.
Oh yeah, the fusion, of course, mid-70s. Yeah, it was huge then. Yeah.
You know, so many different guys. I was thoroughly engrossed with a drummer named Tiki Fullwood, who played on the early Parliament Funkadelic records.
Okay.
He was an incredible drummer. I got to see him when I was very young in my early days in high school, and I thought he was playing a double bass drum, but it was a single pedal.
Oh wow, man!
But you know, this guy was so funky and so lucid and just free flowing on the drums in the funk. He was amazing. So I have a lot of different people that inspired me, and I always take a little bit of them with me, you know, throughout my life. And there's other people too, you know, but those are the main guys.
Yeah, you hear that the you know, when I listen to your playing, like all the diverse influences, you hear the funk, you hear the, you know, the openness, like it's, you cannot put this into your own dough and made your own bread, I think so. Which is
Yeah.
beautiful, you know. But you know, you mentioned funk, and can you tell me the story of Defunct? How did that happen? Because you know, it's like, you know, I know those guys were from
You're
St.
taking
Louis,
me
like you,
back to
but like,
my sex, drugs, and rock and roll days.
oh man, we
sometimes,
cannot.
sometimes my wife don't know all of those stories. No, Defunct was an amazing opportunity for all of us. It was St. Louis based, okay? The original concept. Now, Joe Bowie, of course, he always had the intention of being the out front guy and it being his band, so he's probably got another story. And I don't care, but the true story is we were all from St. Louis. We were the nucleus of the band. Myself, the master guitarist Kelvin Bell,
Oh yeah, man.
Joe Bowie, his brother Byron Bowie, right? In the early days, we decided that we wanted to do something. You know, Joe, of course, brought us together. Also, there was a alto saxophone player, dear friend who passed away, Luther Thomas. At that time, there was a lot of things going on in punk rock and funk
Sure.
and rhythm and blues and jazz all mixing. This was like the late 70s, you know, the thing started in like 78. I hadn't even technically moved to New York, but we were in each other's company when I would come to visit New York. And I did move to New York in 78. And that's when the thing started. We would play. There was a, you know, this is really some wild history. There was a place called La Mama Theater, and the great drummer from St. Louis, Bobo Shaw, Charles Bobo Shaw, he was there like running the theater. So, you know, if I needed a place to crash before I had an apartment, everybody could crash there. People were playing there. At the same time, it was on the Lower East Side of New York where everything was going on. It's like everything, you know, arts and drugs and everything. So,
Sure.
you know, me being a young kid, of course, I didn't stay there that long because, you know, people came in and did things that I just had to remove myself from the premise. But that was the nucleus of the place where we kind of had a place to space to play and grow. There were instruments there, right? And as far as I know, this idea came out of that whole space because we were there, we were playing, we were trying new things, right? So Melvin Gibbs, great bassist Melvin Gibbs was hanging out there, you know, so he seemed to be the likely candidate. And there's a guy named, his name at that time was Martin Albert, but now he's Ayodele, incredible guitarist. And he was there. So that was the nucleus of Defunct. Kelvin, Ayodele, Melvin Gibbs, Joe Bowie, Byron Bowie. And then there was a keyboardist, also named Martin. He was from over there your way someplace. I can't remember exactly where he was from.
Okay.
But he was just, he would make these crazy sounds on the synthesizer, right? And it worked. No matter what we did, it was working. It was just working. So we, you know, Defunct came to be. There's a place called Squat Theater on 23rd Street and around 8th Avenue, between 8th and 7th Avenues, but closer to 8th Avenues. Man, we had folks lined up around the block when Defunct started playing there. And everybody was coming to see our gigs. The young guys, Red Hot Chili Peppers, they got inspired by Defunct. Lounge Lizards got inspired by Defunct. Ray Anderson and his Slickophonics was inspired by Defunct. Brian Eno was coming down. All types of people were there to check out the band, right? Nona Hendrix always was hitting, and but there was this whole it was a whole like community of New York was like that in itself. It
Yeah.
was just like it was a whole community of a lot of different players from different backgrounds playing together, making great music and pushing the music forward.
Yeah.
It was a great time. It was a great space. I did the first couple of European tours,
How was
and
that like?
oh, it was amazing. I mean, we were young and just goofy and on the road, but doing everything that you heard you could do as a musician
Sure.
on the road. So, I am no angel. I did all types of things when I'm 18, 19, 20 years old experiencing these things, and it was beautiful. I mean,
Oh,
it
sure.
set the stage for many different interactions and also relationships. I know people from all over the world from that band, and of course, right after that, I was traveling internationally with Sonny Fortune and McCoy Tyner, the whole heavy jazz the hard hitting jazz world. I had always been working with Hamiet Bluiett and Julius Hemphill, the St. Louis kind of based people. So I had a wide palette for music that I wanted to play and experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you know, everybody knows Joe's made an institution out of Defunct, and so it's alive and well and still moving forward. I'm happy that I made the first recording.
Yeah, make them dance. You gotta do.
Yeah, man. So, and people come up to me still today, man. The Defunct stuff, that was some other stuff. I'm like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think it's
when you think about it, it really was.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
if you look at that original record, all of our names, I don't know now. Somebody told me they saw another print because people do things over the years, but the original record, we were all the writers, right? All the writers of every song on the record. Of course, I never got any writing money.
Sure.
But that's another story.
Yeah, man. So you mentioned that. I mean, you weren't in New York then yet. Like, but was Defunct and started to playing with Sonny and McCoy the main reason you moved to New York? Like, how did that happen? I mean,
yeah. Well, the main reason I moved to New York is because I needed to be in New York.
Okay.
To my everyone I wanted to play with, I basically got an opportunity to play with when I came here. Prior to moving here, I came for 2 to 3 years. Every time I had a spring break in high school, I came up and visited a family or some friends here. So, and I started to, there was a lot of connections that also happened in high school. As I had mentioned, for 1 week, I was in a high school that had an extraordinary program. It was University City High School. Now it's University City Senior High School in St. Louis. And they had a program. See, in America, there was certain things going on with the government funding and state funding. And there were these satellite programs of different schools that were experimenting on different newer types of curriculums. I was fortunate I was in a district that happened. So at my high school, we had what you call an International Jazz Week.
Oh, wow.
Where every year they brought great players. This one particular year, I was a sophomore. They brought Woody Shaw, Rufus Reid, Junior Cook, and Alan Dawson to play with a great local pianist named Ray Kennedy, who passed away, unfortunately. And Ray was amazing. But so I got to spend the entire week with those guys, right? And they got to spend the week with us. I was in an ensemble. I was kind of an advanced player already at my age. So the ensemble I was with with the seniors of the high school, people getting ready to graduate. And so we were tasked with doing things for them. I remember I had to run to McDonald's maybe 3 times a day to get Rufus some Big Macs. That was in the day when he was eating Big Macs. But I got to meet Woody. Woody got to hear us. They would hear us rehearse and adjudicate, give us things to work on and coach us. We also, my school was the host for like the big bands in the area from other high schools, and they would spend the day listening to all of the big bands and then, you know, judge everybody and give them criticism and helpful. All it was very wonderful thing that
Yeah.
happened. As a matter of fact, that particular year, one of the big bands that was in competition with us was a big band. I think it was from St. Charles, Missouri, where Dave Weckl was the drummer.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, me and Dave were okay back then because we knew about each other. We're still okay, you know. But yeah, that's how far back that was. But I got to meet Woody when I got to New York. Woody had already, you know, he remembered my name. He told me, he was like, man, whenever you come to New York, because I know you're coming to New York. So, you know, that was when I got to New York, he started giving me gigs. I was working with Woody, you know.
Yeah.
Junior Cook. I worked in the band with Junior Cook. You know, I was a kid when I got there. All of these guys, you know, and they also had another great player from St. Louis who worked with all of those guys was the great John Hicks.
Oh, sure, man. Yeah.
You know, John and his brother went to high school with my dad and my uncle. So it's a long
All
line
connected,
of
kind of. Yeah.
all being connected, you know.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. Okay. That explains it. I saw some footage of you with Woody, his band, and it's like burning, man. It's really like all those groups were like, you know,
yeah,
it's really
I
like
never
pushing
had
it, like, you know, it's
every gig I had that I was really, really proud of. I was always on the edge and pushing and creating music. That's just what kind of player I am. I've never done well with just those other gigs where I'm like a cocktail gentleman. I'm like, I need the money, but I can't do it.
Sure.
My soul is dying.
yeah. But how did the gig with McCoy happen then? How did that call happen?
That came through Sonny Fortune.
Oh, okay.
So again, like one of those high school trips when I came up, I met Sonny Fortune. He was playing at a club called Sweet Basil's, and Jabali, Billy Hart, was playing drums with him. So I don't know. It seemed like Billy had heard my name. I had been hanging around or whatever. He was extremely friendly to me and gave me an opportunity to sit in with Sonny. And that was that. So by the time I got back to New York, Sonny was like, you got the gig. I played with Sonny on and off for probably 20 years, you know. He was you know, I toured all over with him, all kind of wonderful places, and had a lot of great bands. Now Sonny had at the time he had an incredible percussionist, Guilherme Franco, who was also working with McCoy. And Sonny had left McCoy's band some years before I got there, because you know he worked with him as well. So Guilherme, you know, was doing gigs with us with Sonny, making all these crazy sounds. I had heard Guilherme on tons of records, you know, Brazilian records. He was just amazing. And so he was like, hey, Baraj, man, McCoy is going through a drummer a week. We need a drummer, man. I said, okay. That's what I want to do it. So he got me an audition.
Oh, wow. Okay.
With McCoy. And this was really crazy too, because when I walked into the place, it was at a Carol Sound, a very famous recording rehearsal spot here in New York. I walked in there and I'm sitting outside the studio and I'm hearing Jack DeJohnette and Ron Carter and McCoy, they're killing it. I'm sitting outside like sweating. I'm like, oh man, I'm going back and forth. So then, you know, the door opens and McCoy said, hi, you Ronnie, come on in. I'll go in, right? I'm looking at Jack and Ron, and McCoy said, Ron, can you got a couple minutes to stay? Ron was like, no, I don't have time. So he left, like he really like jetted out of there. So Jack was there. I was talking to Jack a bit, and then McCoy's like, okay, come on. So I went up on the riser, right? And we start playing. And next thing I know, it was probably about 3 hours later.
Wow.
And he said, okay, I got some things coming up. I was like, okay. And I went home, and then I got a phone call, and I think the first place we went to was Brazil.
Oh man, wow.
We played a Monterey Jazz Festival in Brazil, in Rio.
Wow. Yeah.
We were there for 2 weeks, and then that started my almost 3-year stint with him. And
Mm,
that's how it happened through Guilherme Franco, the percussionist in Sunny
amazing.
Fortune. Yeah.
How was he like as a band leader, McCoy, towards you younger guys? I mean,
McCoy was we called him Mumbles because you couldn't really get any real clear thing, especially if you're asking him about if you got some more money because we played longer. You know, but no, he was great band leader. We in terms of the music, he just told you what he wanted and you just played it, you know, and then I was free those years with him. I was able to really play. You know,
yeah,
I was
that's so
just
beautiful.
able to
Yeah,
play and express myself. He taught me a lot about breathing, about endurance, because I mean, back then, you know, concerts, like, you know, it's crazy now too, because some concerts you play on the festival, they only want you to play 45 minutes or
exactly.
something.
Yeah,
Back then, I mean, the minimum you would play was 90 minutes, an hour and a half. But sometimes with McCoy, we'd be on the stage for over 2 hours. I mean,
that's a
and
workout.
it
Yeah,
was intense. And it was intense, but everybody loved it. You know, yeah, it was a different growth process for me too. I mean, of course, I had come out of playing with like hardcore bands and playing a lot of experimental and high energy music, but that was something totally different. You know, I mean, as you saw in that video, I think we were playing Moment's Notice or
yeah,
something, but
yeah.
every single night was up, you know, every single night was up the entire show. And it was a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. Yeah, of course we played ballads, but within those ballads, you know, you were able to breathe and take a breath, but there was still this
Intense.
air of
Yeah.
intensity,
Yeah.
you know, because you knew after the ballad, you're going back up there, man. So
That's incredible. Yeah, early 80s in New York, you know, McCoy, then it's like Sonny Fortune, then Chico Freeman's record to have that one, Destiny's Child, and
oh yeah.
you know Kevin Eubanks record, and then I also read there are no records, but that you had like this incredible ensemble already as a band leader with Kenny Kirkland,
Yeah.
and Marcus
Yeah.
Miller and all those guys. Like, how did that happen, and how come that you didn't record? Or I mean, are there some tapes or something? Or
Yes, there's actually a full record, but not with Marcus Miller. So here's the deal. As soon as I got to New York, I met Kenny Kirkland through I met a whole group of great young musicians, right? There's a guitarist from St. Louis that had moved about a year or two before me named Marvin Horn.
Mhm.
Marvin played with Elvin Jones and a lot of different people. Great guitarist, right? So Kelvin Bell and I came up around the same time, 78. And so we met a lot of these young people, right? In that crew of musicians was the great John Purcell, multi-instrumentalist,
yeah, a lot of them.
Marcus Miller, Cecil McBee Jr., Cecil McBee's son, who's a phenomenal bass player, Marvin Horn, a young man named Lonnie Cavers, who played drums and keyboards and sang like Donny Hathaway and Stevie Wonder put together. Amazing. Who else was part of that crew? Kim Clark.
Oh, wow.
The bassist Kim Clark. Yeah. Through that conglomeration, I met Rael Wesley Grant, Kenwood Denard, Delmar Brown,
Yeah.
And then Marcus Miller. So all of us were kind of intermingling. You know, Kenny Kirkland was in the center of all of that because Kenny was working with all of us in different capacities and, you know, just but we hung out like kids, you know. Kelvin and I had a car we shared. I had a car, you know, we were driving all over town where everybody was going to be. We'd be there. We play together. Kenny had his little Toyota. We're sitting in Kenny's car. You know, we all smoked weed pretty much and hang out with each other and started creating music, started creating jobs. So I coming from St. Louis, I already had bands. I had always wanted my own band because for me, my biggest expression is to be able to do it through
Yeah.
a band of people that I love and believe in, and trust and I want to write music for. So I put together the Barrage Ensemble with Kenny Kirkland, Marcus Miller, and Joe Ford.
Oh yeah.
Joe Ford, yeah. Joe Ford and I were playing with McCoy.
McCoy, yeah, sure.
Now, prior to even putting that band together, Kenny and I were already playing together. We played, and Marcus, we were like a trio behind Michael Baniak and Ursula Duciak, the fusion group.
Yeah, yeah.
We played behind a guy named Denny Morales. He was a fusion saxophonist. We played behind Randy Brecker, sometimes Michael Brecker. We played behind other people, Denise Della Pina and Larmil Machado. There was a Puerto Rican Brazilian group. There was SOBs had just opened in New York, Sounds of Brazil, so we were playing everywhere. I mean, we were doing all of those types of things. And in the middle of it, I had my band. So when we weren't on the road, I would always book gigs. We worked all the time at 7th Avenue South, 55 Grand. There was a couple other spots. McHale's, it was up on 96th Street. It was a great club in New York. Everybody worked there. George Benson, Art Blakey, everybody. So we had and my band was like a workshop band. We were working on new tunes. We were playing obscure, maybe some obscure Miles and Wayne, not their real popular music. And we were doing things. It was incredible, Kenny was.
He was a master at it.
Yeah, and he's for me as a keyboardist, he was doing all of the stuff that guys now they still don't do enough of, playing all of the keyboards, experimenting with the sounds, creating sounds on the gig, just open and free, so I mean, bar none, he's my all-time favorite. Plus we were at one point, we were so close, we lived together with a group of guys on 30th Street, where neither one of us actually lived there, but they had couches. So we ended up, we would go there and spend the night and play for days and days. If we weren't, then go back to our apartments and freshen up. I could go to Kenny's mom's and dad's house and spend the night, and get fed. It was just a wonderful time, and the music that we did was just, it was amazing. So I was also blessed. And I guess, there was a time, this is a later story or another time, or maybe not even told until it comes out of my book. But I was, at the time I was so young and so much was going on. Yeah, of course I probably developed some type of ego, but I don't think it was a negative ego. But certain things, I'll give you one example, right? And this is a true story. I got picked up by a major record label one day. They came to my house and sent a limo after seeing the band. And this is after the band had done some iterations and Wynton Marsalis was in the band. Anyway, they picked me up and they come to my house. And so, Wynton was a big buzz. When they they take me to the office, they were like, well, we want to record your band, but we want to call it Ronnie Barrage Wynton Marsalis Quintet. And I'm like, no, why? My band's been in existence for almost 2 years. I write all of the music. Kenny writes all the music, Marcus brought in some tunes. We're doing this other music. No, he's just a sideman that I hired at the time. So with that, they let me out of the meeting. And after that, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, he thinks he's this way or that way, right? So, the problem with this industry and the music is that sometimes people may take or hear something, and this stuff just gets blown away. My career now has been stifled because of maybe, that incident, maybe a couple other ones, but it's horrible. You know, it's horrible because as a young man, I wasn't stifled in terms of all of the opportunities I
Yeah.
got, but in terms of being a band leader, you know, because Art Blakey and Elvin, they were supportive. They would come to all my shows. They're like, keep doing what you're doing. You know, we need more drummer leaders.
Yeah.
But, you know, for some reason, I never got that type of acclaim for years later. And I'm okay. You know, I'm happy. My kids are happy. They're healthy. God, I know God is in my life. But it does do something to you when you look back some years and you're like, man,
Yeah.
why? You know, I mean, you know, why? So, but you have to let it go and you got to keep moving.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, well, we know, you know, I know about your
Yeah.
music. Musicians know
Yeah.
you, and you know, I think
Yeah,
that's at least. I mean, that's something. That's a big thing. I think, you know, that
absolutely. It's a huge
y-
thing. Yeah.
you know. But I
So,
know
and I'm
exactly
glad
what
that
you
I'm,
mean. You know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But there is like an album that you guys recorded. I mean, like that you have like tapes or something like.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's what we were talking about. Yeah. So I took in the band and I recorded at Vanguard Studios, right? Vanguard has the label, Vanguard Records,
Yeah.
Vanguard Studio. The studio was on 23rd Street. But here's something that's really strange that happened. Like, I had the great David Baker as an engineer. He recorded the band. So now, man, this record is amazing. So it's myself, Kenny Kirkland, Jerry Gonzalez on
Ooh.
congas and trumpet, Kelvin Bell and Kevin Eubanks on acoustic guitar on the tune, Wallace Roney on trumpet,
Seriously.
Joe
Oh
Ford
man.
on saxophones. Yeah, Joe Ford on saxophones. Eric Person as a young kid playing some background sax parts. And Andy McLeod, the great Andy McLeod on bass, and the great Clarence C played bass on a couple of tunes.
Yeah. Wow.
That record is a complete record. We were going to mix it, and then Vanguard Studios closed down. They moved my tapes to a place where I didn't know where they were.
Oh shit.
So years and years went by. Then I found out where my tapes were, and they say, "Oh, well, you have to pay a certain amount of money." So I start paying the money to get my tapes, right? Then the storage place moved somewhere out in California. Now, before David Baker died, he called me up. He said, "Man, Ronnie, I see your tapes here. So you need to get your tapes and put that record out." So I called Vanguard, and they said, "Well, we don't give out Vanguard artists recordings." I said, "I was never one of your artists.
Mhm.
I rented the studio only. I need my tapes, you know." They never would give me my tapes. So they're still somewhere, I believe,
Oh
in
man,
California,
shit. Okay. That's
some warehouse. I have to find a lawyer, but I had maintained cassette tapes. I have
wow.
the entire record on cassette. I transferred it digitally. It
Oh,
doesn't
super.
sound bad, but it's not like, you know, I can't remix the multi-tracks.
Sure. Yeah. But still, come on.
So
Ooh, that's like history there, man. We need this.
I know. Well, I'm gonna start putting out some singles like that. I heard
Yeah.
there's of different songs and showing it, but it's, yeah, man, you know. And then I got blessed recently. I saw a really dear friend of mine who gave me a folder. His mother was a great photographer, and she's got all of these pictures of that band in
Oh,
7th
wow,
Avenue
man.
South with Marcus, Joe, Kenny. Also, after Kenny, there was a great pianist who would sub for him, keyboardist named Clyde Kreiner. So I got photos with Clyde. Great historical things. I just have to pace myself, and I am writing a book. My wife is like, "When is it coming out?" I'm like, "Hey, these things take time." I mean,
Sure.
my life is like this big. It's like, you know. So
That's incredible, man. Wow, beautiful. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I have some really good. It sounds good. I mean, like I only let select people listen to it, right?
Sure.
I let Alex hear because he had never heard Kenny Kirkland other than a couple of records, right? I said, you know, I let Nimrod hear because Marcus is in his developing stages,
Sure.
right? So we were all
Amazing.
development, man. It's like crazy, crazy good. I have a live recording of uh the Barrage Ensemble in Philadelphia. There used to be
Oh man.
these cool jazz festivals. So I have a live recording of that. It was in 1981 with Joe, Kenny, and Marcus.
Wow,
And
man. Come on.
yeah, it's like, it's pretty nice. So that'll probably be the first thing I put out. I just, you know,
Yeah, the live one. I mean, that's wow,
yeah.
man. Whew, okay, you got me excited now.
Excuse me one second.
Oh, sure, no worries.
Yeah, this summer
Yeah,
cold thing.
but
It's been like 80, 90 degrees here, man. And then I come in the house and sometimes the
the
air
AC,
conditioner's
right?
too
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
But it's better needed.
But
Yeah.
I want to ask you about pianists. You know, when I look at the 80s, you were everywhere, I think, and
Yeah.
especially how did you did like many kind of like co-led groups, right? And like
Uh-huh.
especially the stuff with Jerry Allen and
Yeah.
Margaret Miller and all those records. How did those groups happen, like in your musical life, like those
Okay,
recordings? And
so you know, to be honest with you, like, okay, so Kenny was kind of like the catalyst for me meeting people like Mulgrew.
mm,
Because you know, Mulgrew, he got a lot of his traction substituting for Kenny Kirkland.
yeah,
Okay. So that's how our relationship kind of came about with Mulgrew. But also, you know, I was very close to Art Blakey the entire time
mm,
I moved to New York. So, you know, Art was also telling me, is like, well, you know, the guy kid playing with me, he could play with you, you know, stuff like that. But it the family, the community was much closer, and it wasn't like cliques back then, you know.
mm,
It was like, hey man, this guy's playing some stuff I want to play with. Let me go call him. And everybody was accessible. So we just call each other and start playing together, put things
mm,
together, you know. Now the whole Jerry Allen thing, you know, I had a band called Third Kind of Blue with
yeah,
John Purcell and Anthony
Anthony,
Cox.
yeah.
That band influenced a lot of different people. You know,
How did that one happen? I mean, I did this talk with Anthony, and you know, we spoke like, you know, he had so many stories, but like, how did that trio begin?
So for me, it was John Purcell. John Purcell and I, like I said, he was part of that core group of young musicians
Yeah,
I met when I got here. And John and I were doing all types of things together, you know. He got approached by somebody. I think he was working with Jack DeJohnette.
yeah,
And I think it was Manfred Eicher who had approached him about doing something with his own band. So he called me, and we started looking for bass players, and Anthony was killing. Anthony and I had played together with man, I can't remember who we first played together before we formed Third Kind of Blue, but we came together in some kind of way to form Third Kind of Blue. I know Anthony and I did a couple things with Sam Rivers too,
mm,
a couple of other people. But John and I was always working together. We were working together with different big bands, Julius Hemphill's,
yeah.
John Hicks big band, Howard Johnson big band, all types of things was going on back then. I was like, man, I was all over the place, like you said, playing
Super
with
busy, yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
And it's funny because even at the same time of playing with my own bands, I was a regular with Jackie McLean and Sonny Rollins and Sonny Simmons, a lot of different, you know, the whole thing. I was also playing with a lot of what they call the avant-garde cats, Frank Lowe,
Wow, really?
C Sharp, all types of people. Michelle Rosewoman and I, and we were doing trio things with Kelvin Bell. So anyway, Third Kind of Blue came out, and we got a record deal with Stephen Minor Music. And we did the one record. And immediately after we did the one record, there was things that seemed to just start happening to try to pull us apart, even though we stayed together a few years. You know, that band was breaking boundaries, you know,
Yeah.
because, you know, I'm doing the drum keyboard thing and singing and some electronics, and John was playing everything. He had his elbow English horn.
Yeah.
He had a case full of, and we were just making sounds and colors. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. It was an amazing band.
Yeah.
But you know, I can't understand the politics of all of the things that happened, but I know that there was some weird stuff that happened that just, you know, started to pull us apart. Not as a band. John and I kept Third Kind of Blue going on, but we couldn't get another record deal. Some of the tours kind of slowed down. But that band had a couple of different lifetimes. Okay, so after Anthony, Kenny Davis played bass with us. We toured a good couple of years throughout Europe
with Kenny.
with Kenny.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. Then after that, Matthew Garrison was the bass player.
Really? Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Matthew did several gigs for us on the stateside. I don't think we went to Europe. We went to Haiti, and maybe a couple other Caribbean places. And then, you know, Matthew's career was jumping off. He's playing with other people, you know, and we didn't have enough work to sustain him. So John and I started doing other things. Then I put together the band again later on with the guy I mentioned that's in my band now, Alain Bradette, and with Essiet on bass.
Oh, really?
That was a great band.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to tour the States. We've toured places in the States. I took them down to Martinique and some other places. But, you know, that came much later in my life. You know, I'm teaching in universities and trying to raise my daughters and all of these types of things. So without any type of record label or management company like helping you to do things, you know, your life is, you gotta choose what you have to do for your children and for your sanity.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, man, Anthony and I have been in touch for years trying to do some things, man. We were actually this close to doing some trio stuff with Alan Holdsworth.
Seriously?
Who is my all-time favorite guitarist.
Me too. Really?
I had been communicating with Alan because I met him many years ago. And Anthony, every time we talked about guitarists trying to do something, it was always Alan.
Wow,
we were that close, but of course that guy was so super busy, you know, and we couldn't figure out how we could all come together.
Wow, that would have been a trio. Woo, man.
Tell me about it.
Oh man. Yeah, it's like,
tell me about it.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, but you mentioned before also Wayne Shorter, and you know, you're playing with everyone. Like, how was it like with Wayne and that gig? I mean,
that was a beautiful gig too, because his music, man, oh Lord, everybody knows his compositions are just they're like, I want to go back to like you know, in the 80s and stuff, there were these popular movies with little white girls, and they would say like, "Oh, he's dreamy." Wayne's music is like dreamy. So, yeah. But it's always awe-inspiring, you know, how he composes, and just to have the opportunity to play with him is amazing. You know, that whole thing is another weird political sphere I kind of went in and out, because originally, here's another true story. I was recommended by Peter Erskine when he was leaving Weather Report, also by Jaco, and also by Wayne.
Really?
At the time, Joe Zawinul wanted Omar Hakim. So that's who got the gig, right? I never got to play with those guys together, but I played in Jaco's band, his small band, his big
Seriously?
band.
I didn't know that, man.
I played the tour with
Seriously?
Wayne, and I played with the Zawinul Syndicate, right?
Wow.
Go figure.
Wow, man, I didn't know that. Wow, seriously.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, it's that's also one of the things, man. I don't know, I don't know. It's some weird political things that happen, and then there's also weird things about um what people instead of, like, prior to those times, people would always be like, okay, well, look, I heard you could play like this. I heard you could read. I heard you
Yeah,
could do
yeah,
this. I want you to play. Let's play. But then certain things started happening where people would hear stuff and they wouldn't call because somebody would say something contrary.
mm,
And a lot of people were put in the category because this music industry loves to put people in categories. They love to put
sure.
music in
It's
categories.
easier for them, yeah, for it. Yeah,
But in the same instance like that, a lot of people, don't those opportunities don't get come to fruition like they used to.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's just one of those things you have to look at it. When I look back in the history of it, it's like it's pretty sad because there's a lot of great players that could have had all these great opportunities. I'm not just speaking when I'm speaking to my own story. I'm speaking about a lot of people that I know, it's
yeah,
like, and how the industry, and even now, is saturated with like Christian McBrides and Wynton Marcelluses. And it's like, come on, man. It's a whole bunch of people, that are heavyweights out here, and we're not
yeah,
keeping the music in a bag. Music cannot be kept in the bag.
yeah,
It's supposed to touch everybody and everything in some type of way. That's the beauty of it. It's our
yeah,
real natural healing force. It's our universal language.
yeah. No, I
You
agree.
know,
Yeah, I mean, it's so many
yeah,
players. Like you
yeah,
play with, John Purcell. For me,
yeah,
one of the most underrated
yeah,
players out there, an improviser. So you mentioned like drummers like Freddie Waits and I don't know,
yeah,
Danny Richmond. I mean, we know about them, of course,
yeah,
and even Kenny
yeah,
Kirkland, let's say. And then you ask, the younger generation. I sometimes do workshops also, and
yeah,
I talked to some drummers last year, and I mentioned like, well, Danny Richmond or Paul Motion, and they're like, no, I don't know these guys. What the,
yeah,
what are you talking about,
yeah,
man?
yeah,
Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard Tony Williams. Yeah, I've heard about him. Like, and their musical transcription starts with, Eric Harland or,
right, yeah,
or Clarence Penn. I love these guys, but come
yeah,
on, man, go back. What those guys
yeah,
studied, and
yeah, yeah.
it's like start to
Yeah, tell
investigate.
me about it. I know. Teaching at universities, I get students and I'm like, wait, you haven't heard of so and so? You don't know this, you don't know that. Wait.
Yeah,
Where is your beginning? Oh, Chris Potter. I'm like, no, 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 no. Come
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Let's
Yeah,
let me show you something.
exactly. Yeah, bizarre, man. But yeah, but cool. Cool, Ronnie, man. I won't take more of your time so that
No, thank you,
you
Samo.
got to read the book. I got to read the book also, when you really
Yeah, I look, it's I'm giving myself a deadline. I'm not gonna say what it is, but I'm giving myself one, and
yeah, would be
I'm gonna complete it.
yeah, come on, would be nice. I mean, already now what you told me, and I think you have so much
Yeah,
more musically, and
absolutely.
so.
So
But
thank you so much.
Dr. Jazz.